Washington mounts pressure on North Korea, vowing to use all measures possible to curb its weapons development, all the while tightening cooperation with Seoul. Tensions are high at sea as illegal Chinese fishing boats resort to violence against Korean Coast Guard authorities, driving up calls for tougher countermeasures. All this right ahead. Welcome to News Inside. I'm An Jang-hyun. Let's meet our panelists. Professor Shin Sang-hyuk from Kyung University Graduate School of International Studies is back with us. And Dr. Bong Young-sik from Yonsei University Institute for North Korean Studies is with us as well. Seoul and Washington staged massive joint naval drills this week, with Pyongyang showing no signs of slowing down its weapons development. Closer cooperation between the two countries is aimed at building a stronger front against the North, especially as Washington mulls new options for pressure.
The growing nuclear threats from North Korea have added a greater degree of importance to Seoul and Washington joint military exercises. Last month, the two launched joint Air Force drills, and this month, a massive naval exercise took place.
북한의 연이은 도발에 한미가 공동으로 대응하고 한미 동맹과 한미 연합 전력의 철저한 대비 태세를 과시하기 위함입니다.
Within the U.S., there are growing calls for tighter cooperation with Seoul, but also for stronger unilateral sanctions against the North. Within a month after Pyongyang's fourth nuclear test, the Obama administration signed a comprehensive set of sanctions into law. One of the key elements is implementing secondary boycotts against third country individuals and companies and banks that aid the regime. In July, Washington announced sanctions against those in violation of human rights in the North, including leader Kim Jongun. Despite the stronger measures, Pyongyang showed no signs of stepping away from its military provocations. It test-fired its Musudan missile 6 times, with a target range of 3,000 to 4,000 kilometers, which would place Guam within the area. Adding to that, last month it even carried out its 5th nuclear test. Following this, the U.S. stepped up investigations into Chinese companies aiding the regime and also placed sanctions on the country's only airline, Air Koryo. Pyongyang's foreign ministry balked, saying instead of learning from its failed North Korea policies, the Obama administration is looking to overthrow the regime. With the Obama administration counting down the days left in its current term, tensions between Washington and Pyongyang are building up, leading to questions about which direction the U.S. will take in its future North Korea policy.
October 10th, this past Monday, was North Korea's Workers' Party Foundation Day, but unlike what many had expected, it went by quietly without any major incident. Why do you think that was?
First of all, Korea and USA government has prepared for any provocative actions made by North Koreans. So in such a kind of situation, North Koreans must have some pressures. So maybe they refrain themselves from making any further provocative actions. And secondly, after the 5th nuclear test in North Korea, the USA has taken the initiatives in taking further the economic sanctions against North Korea in cooperation with many countries around the world, particularly within the United Nations frame. But China and Russian government has not shown very clear stance on this further sanctions yet. So by refraining themselves from taking further provocative actions, they do not create a situation making the Russia and Chinese government to join to these economic sanctions. Lastly, very recently, in the northern part of the North Korea, they had the huge flood, and then North Korean government has officially asked international community to help them. Maybe these 3 things could be the major reasons why they have been very quiet during the this week, particularly on the anniversary of the Labour Party Foundation Day.
Right. But the possibility of another provocation is always there. A lot of movement has been detected at multiple test sites. When do you think North Korea will make its next move, and in what form?
It is almost given that North Korean regime will not abandon its effort to develop its intercontinental missile technology and nuclear weapons. So in order to fulfill that long-term goal, it is inevitable that the regime will conduct some tests in near future. I believe that some kind of missile test would come before the next nuclear test, judging from the fact that only this year alone, in 2016, North Korea has conducted 2 nuclear tests already. So I guess in order to develop its WMD capability in the fullest form, now it is time for North Korean regime to pour more effort in sophisticating the delivery system, which is intercontinental missiles, especially the KN-08 or KN-14, the mobile intercontinental missiles.
Plus, there are some analysts who speculate that there just simply wasn't enough time between the 5th nuclear test and the next one for the North to have made substantial progress.
Right. I believe I'm one of those experts who actually made that point, but I guess nobody really listened to me. But there's something called the 3-year cycle in order to get the most out of each nuclear test and prepare for the next one, because you do not want to waste a very difficult, demanding nuclear test without really learning anything important. So it was really surprising, to be honest, that North Korea conducted another nuclear test after the 4th one. That's a deviation, clear deviation from the 3-year cycle.
Right, within an 8-month span.
Right, right. I guess it also serves some political purposes in the case of the 5th nuclear test by North Korea. And that gives more reason to believe that North Korea is likely to conduct missile tests before another nuclear test.
Well, meanwhile, the joint naval drills this week are the first carried out in all waters around the Korean Peninsula at the same time. They're called the Invincible Spirit 2016 and are supposed to be a major show of force.
Yes, I think so, yes. Well, this joint naval drills started the 10th October. We have to think about why Korea and the USA government carried out these joint military drills. Through these drills, they want to demonstrate preparedness for any possible North Korea's provocations. Through these joint naval drills, definitely the Korea and the USA government very clearly send the message to North Korean the government, I think.
But the problem with this having massive joint military exercise is that it serves its own purpose, core purpose, which is to demonstrate the resolve, joint resolve to deal with any type of provocations possibly waged by North Korea. But having these military drills by and of themselves will not slow down or stop North Korea's attempts to develop its missile and nuclear weapons.
In fact, they could further provoke the North, which is a concern that some have raised.
That's the point of argument raised by the critic of the containment policy toward North Korea, that it only strengthened the resolve of North Korean regime to rely on nuclear weapons as the ultimate guarantee for its survival. So there are ups and downs of having the joint military exercises in terms of demonstrating the resolve and the capability to deter and defeat North Korean aggression.
Do you think the U.S. is taking a more forceful approach after the 5th nuclear test?
The United States government has not really demonstrated any new North Korea policy yet. I see 2 oppositional trends coming from the United States. That is very interesting, by the way. One is United States government has strengthened its joint military cooperation with South Korea, confirming its security commitment to protect South Korea from any type of provocation by the North. And it has raised its support and attention to the grave situations in terms of human rights violations inside North Korea. That's hardline policy strengthened by the United States government in recent period. On the other hand, very interestingly, the US media has published editorials arguing in favor of resumption of talks with North Korea, despite the fact that North Korea remains as abhorrent, irrational, and threatening political leadership. So you have a call for an action for more hardline North Korea policy on one hand, But at least in the US media, there is an opposite voice in favor of opening up for dialogue and meaningful negotiation with North Korea.
Well, a little later on, we'll talk about another option that's being discussed in Washington. But this week, we did see the U.S. ambassador to the UN, Samantha Power, visit Seoul and meet with North Korean defectors. Also, Washington's special envoy for North Korean human rights was in town. Do you see these back-to-back visits as a means of putting more pressure on Pyongyang?
I think so. Their back-to-back visit to Korea can be a very clear evidence showing the South Korean government as well as the USA government. They mean to use North Korea's human rights issues as the leverage to place more pressure on North Korean side, also to step up the international cooperations. So definitely their visit can be understood as a way to give a kind of some warning to North Korean side. If you come across some line, there will be a retaliatory action not only from the Korea, USA, but also from international community. So certainly their back-to-back visit to Korea has been a very strong evidence showing the policies or mind of South Korean as well as the USA governments towards North Korea's provocative actions.
So we've seen a number of high-level U.S. officials visit Korea after Pyongyang's fifth nuclear test to step up cooperation with Seoul. Let's take a look at what some of them had to say.
4 days after Pyongyang conducted its fifth nuclear test, Washington's Special Representative for North Korea Policy, Sung Kim, arrived in Seoul. During discussions with his six-party talks counterparts, he warned Washington will pull out all the stops to pressure North Korea. Also unveiled were plans to push for fresh sanctions at the UN level. Less than a month later, U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Samantha Power, who is leading efforts to draw up new sanctions at the global body, visited the South. She met with high-level government officials and discussed methods to enhance cooperation and countermeasures against Pyongyang.
So we are not going to sacrifice or shortchange our ambition to rush this out. We want this resolution to be practically impactful on the ground.
On the heels of this trip, U.S. Special Envoy for North Korean Human Rights, Robert King, also visited South Korea. He met with human rights activists and discussed ways to push for a UN resolution on the matter. During the same period, former Undersecretary of State Wendy Sherman also met with Seoul's Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se. They shared the need for stronger pressure against Pyongyang while further highlighting the importance of robust cooperation between Seoul and Washington.
Going back to another option that's begun to surface in Washington, that is Washington launching a preemptive strike against North Korea. How seriously do you think this option is being considered?
Compared to 1994, when preemptive surgical strike at the Yongbyon nuclear site was seriously considered, I would say the probability of actually launching preemptive strike for the purpose of decapitating the leadership or destroying the nuclear facility is extremely low. Simply, South Korea and other countries could not absorb the backdraft of preemptive strikes. One, we do not really know where and how much, what kind of nuclear materials and facilities are exactly located inside North Korea. Two, we have a precedent in which South Korean President Kim Jong-un flatly opposed the idea of launching preemptive surgical strike because the United States is far away from the place of the potential retaliation by North Korea in case the United States, in cooperation with the South Korean military, launching surgical strike. We also take into account China's position in this. In case of preemptive strike, and regardless of the retaliatory measures taken by North Korea or not, when you have your own citizens are in South Korea, so many of them, more than 1 million at one given point, no country can turn a blind eye to the safety and survival of your own citizens.
But apparently, there's also been discussion in China about launching surgical strikes and removing leader Kim Jongun, which I assume a lot of people would find hard to believe.
I believe that the emphasis is put on eliminating Kim Jong-un as a stone in the shoes, not the preemptive strike to eliminate the nuclear and missile capability of North Korea. I don't know whether it's just one swallow making the summer. We have to be careful about evaluating the objective and overall position of Chinese government with regard to North Korea, because one of the three major goals Chinese government has repeatedly confirmed with regard to its policy toward North Korea. It do not only include the non-proliferation, but also regional stability and prevention of another war on the Korean Peninsula.
Do you think Kim Jong-un will feel pressured at all by the fact that there is this idea of a preemptive strike floating around in Washington and maybe in China?
Who knows? But I think he also have heavy pressure because of all actions taken by the United States and Korean government, or even by the international community. Well, but the question is that we should not push him just to one direction. I mean, we have to give him a kind of some channel to find a solution to this situation. That means that we have to maintain some dialogue channels with North Korean government. And also, as we have done so far, we have sent him a message. If you change, I mean, North Korea change first, there must be some possibility for the cohabitation, the North Korean regime and then or South Korea or even USA. So I think if by sending such a kind of message, North Korea continuously, definitely we will just make more effects in our the measures. I mean, the very strong measures against North Korea, I think.
Well, talks are underway for stepping up sanctions against North Korea. In the meantime, the issue of human rights is being further underscored by the U.S. Do you think we'll see additional measures put into place regarding North Korean human rights?
Yes, at least in the United States. The U.S. House is trying to extend the North Korea Human Rights Act for another 5 years until the year 2022. And we have to approach the North Korean human rights from two standpoints. One is, as you mentioned, it's an instrumental value in terms of putting additional pressure on North Korea for its provocations and nuclear and other WMD developments. The other purpose of addressing human rights situation in North Korea is a human right violation by and of itself is a very important foreign policy goal for any democratic countries, including the United States and South Korea. We also passed North Korean Human Rights Act. So we have to keep the right balance between addressing the North Korean human rights violation from the instrumentalist perspective in connection with North Korea's WMD capability and threats, and addressing the issue because of our commitment to democratic values and basic human rights for North Koreans, North Korean residents in the North, as emphasized by President Park Geun-hye herself in her address on the Korean Armed Forces Day. And it's a delicate balance, I'm sure, to make. But the talk about trying to indict Kim Jong-un and other high-ranked North Korean officials to the International Criminal Court as war criminals, there's some technical and political considerations to be made, in my personal opinion. Using that card can be an additional threat and pressure to Kim Jong-un regime. But on the other hand, it may compromise sovereignty of the South Korean government, because the Constitution of the Republic of Korea, South Korean Constitution, defines the entire North Korean territory as part of South Korea. It is temporarily and unlawfully occupied and administered by puppet government, which is the Kim regime. By giving up the jurisdiction to prosecute those leaders who are responsible for all the atrocities and provocations and military aggressions, not in the domestic court, but in the international court, may compromise South Korea's representation to determine the fate of peacefully unified Korea. So you have to be really careful how much international attention and international support and the role of international court should be played, whether it will be favorable to South Korea exercising its own autonomy to determine the fate as a unified country, or it will undercut autonomy of South Korea.
I guess we'll have to wait and see which direction the U.S. First is headed with its human rights policies. Let's move on to our next story. Illegal Chinese fishing vessels continue to stir up trouble in South Korean waters, with 2 ships causing a Korean patrol boat to sink last week. Take a look.
On October 7th, Incheon Coast Guard set out to conduct regular patrols on illegal fishing by Chinese vessels. During a crackdown, violence broke out with strong resistance from Chinese crew members. The illegal ships rammed the Korean patrol boat twice, eventually sinking the vessel.
손에 잡힌 건 다 흉기입니다. 갑판에서 사용되는 것들이 물건들이 전부 다 쇠로 돼 있고 이제 철제로 돼 있기 때문에 어떤 거든지 이제 휘두르면 다 흉기가 될 수 있습니다. 칼도 사용하고요, 쇠파이프도 사용하고 10m 정도 되는 배를 충돌하고자 하면은 그건 살인이라든지 이 사람이 죽어도 상관없다라는 그런 생각을 했을 가능성이 있다고 봅니다.
Conflicts with Chinese fishing ships has long been a problem for Korea. After the fishing ban in place from July to August was lifted, the country has seen a rapid increase, with an average 77 vessels spotted every day. According to Coast Guard guidelines, officers are allowed to use firearms during crackdowns, but it is often extremely challenging to limit the target area to the lower half of the body on choppy waters. This is why, in light of the recent incident, the government has announced stronger measures.
필요한 경우 공용항이 사격뿐만 아니라 경비함정이 직접 중국어선을 충격하여 제압하는 등 동원 가능한 모든 방법을 이용하여 적극적으로 대응해 나가겠습니다. 공무집행 방해자는 해당 어선 승선은 전원을 구속 수사하고 무허가 조업선에 대해서는 몰수 처분을 강화하고 몰수 판결 시에는 공매 절차 없이 폐기 처분하도록 관계부처와 협조하겠습니다.
Meanwhile, Korea's foreign ministry delivered a strong message to the Chinese government through its Seoul-based ambassador. We'll look at the growing problems Korea faces with Chinese illegal fishing.
So this is a problem that Korea has dealt with for years with China. It seems these Chinese fishing boats have gotten more aggressive and violent as they try to evade these crackdowns?
Yes. This the case is just part of a series of situations made by the Chinese fishing vessels. They have been very hostile. It's quite difficult for us to regard them as just a fishing boats or fishermen, because whenever they were caught by the Korean Coast Guard because they are doing illegal fishing in Korean water, Korean Sea, they arrested according to the international sea law, but they just tried to escape, and also even they tried to attack the Korean Marine Police.
Yeah.
So it's challenge against the Korean public, the authority. It reached to the limits. No more the lenient the measures can be, the allowable by the Korean government in dealing with these issues. Actually, when you consider the actions taken by the other foreign governments dealing with very similar cases, we have to change our policy dealing with this case. Of course, according to the law, the Korean the police can use the weapons according to law, but they have refrained themselves from using weapons because of the pressures which they can have. In case of 2014, when the Chinese captain was shot dead, what kind of situation happened? There was a conflict between Korean government and Chinese government, and he was under heavy pressure. But I think that's not correct. We have to encourage them to use the given authority when it is needed.
Why do you think so many Chinese fishermen are involved in illegal fishing?
Because that's where money is. China, since 2012, has become the biggest consumer of seafood products in the world, and 30% of in all the international seafood consumption is made in China, and the 35% of the all seafood production is made in China. And the Chinese people's diet has changed from heavily dependent upon grain and meats to seafood, thanks to steady economic development. One average Chinese person consumes about 49 kilograms of seafood in 2015. That's a huge increase from average 30 kilograms per person in 2000. So I don't think the illegal fishing by Chinese vessels will go away soon, despite or even regardless of tough measures levied by Chinese government itself, because it's a business, a very lucrative one. And the very specific reason why there has been such a skyrocketing illegal fishing activities in the West Sea of Korea by Chinese vessels is that the mouth of the Yangtze River, which used to be one of the 4 richest near-sea fishing zones in the world, in the entire world, has been seriously polluted because of the rapid industrialization in the region that connects Shanghai and Guangzhou. So Chinese fishermen could not find any fish to catch there, so they moved, enjoying the newly developed advanced distance fishing technology and engineering to come near the West Sea of Korea.
Well, there are also reports suggesting that North Korea is partly to blame for the increase in the frequencies of illegal Chinese fishing vessels in South Korean waters.
It's a very challenging geographic situation to deal with, because the northern limitation line with North Korea is only 1.4 kilometers, or in the most distant regions, 2.5 kilometers away from that area of where illegal fishing activities by Chinese vessels are most commonly taking place. So whenever the coastal guard of South Korea try to seize those illegal fishing Chinese vessels, they could just go
north of the NLL,
leave and move to the north of the NLL. And allegedly, North Korean government issued a fishing license for 1,500 Chinese fishing vessels to conduct a catch in exchange for the $30 million every year. And it is extremely risky for the coastal guard of South Korean government. We have to acknowledge their effort and their courage to risk their lives and well-beings, because that area are totally exposed to the possible artillery attack by North Korean Navy stationing there. So we can criticize the South Korean government for failing to do this and that, but at the same time, we have to also see the other side in which they are trying to do whatever they can.
I was trying to blame the North Korean government rather than the
Right.
South Korean government, but the losses incurred by illegal fishing are astronomical, not only for Korea, but also for other countries. Here's a closer look.
Studies by Ongjin-gun County and Incheon shows that from 2010 to 2014, losses stemming from Chinese illegal fishing mounted to $21 million. Not only that, with ships wiping the supply clean, marine resources have plummeted by 650,000 tons, accounting for over 21% of overall fisheries. Violent resistance has also led to deaths and casualties. Over the past years, 2 Coast Guard officers have died during crackdowns, and 73 people have sustained injuries. Last month, 3 Chinese crew members died in a fire. In Russia and South Africa, authorities are pulling out more aggressive measures to protect their waters from illegal fishing. In the Philippines, Indonesia, and Japan, Chinese fishermen are adding fuel to fire in areas already facing heightened tension over territorial disputes.
China has been making a lot of enemies because of illegal fishing. You mentioned earlier that other countries have taken much stronger countermeasures against illegal Chinese fishing boats. Can you give us some examples?
Yeah, for example, in Argentine government very recently, to to seize the illegally fishing Chinese fishing boat. They tried to seize them, but the Chinese vessels tried to escape. So they even fire warning shots. And they actually, the boat was sunken down. And then even though the fishermen were saved by the Argentine safeguard vessel. There is another case. The Indonesian government has been quite strong in dealing with those kind of illegal fishing foreign boats. They exploited those vessels to sink down in the sea. It's really extremely strong measures.
So use of force is quite common in other countries.
Of course, because of this kind of the measures taken by the Indonesian government and Argentine government, there have been diplomatic conflicts between involving countries. I think yes, without using the forces, if the situation can be solved, it's good. Even though I empathize that Korean government should take more effective ways in dealing with the illegally fishing Chinese boats in Korean waters. The reason is this. Once the government lose the controlling power over the situation, what kind of situations we will have? The situation will be getting worse and worse. And then we will not avoid the situation requiring further forceful ways. It's very unhappy, tragedy in the relationship between involving countries. So I think considering the situation happening right now, and considering the situations or measures taken by other foreign governments in dealing with similar cases, definitely Korean government should take the initiative measures. Certainly, we have to respect human rights, human lives. But I think we need some criteria. Some criteria in dealing with the situation. In this context, the government should get some lessons from the foreign government measures dealing with the similar cases.
So this week, the government did announce a set of stronger countermeasures. But what took so long for Seoul to toughen up?
We are all reminded that we had a segment in this program, News Insight, on exactly the same case in June 15th, that when there was illegal fishing activities by Chinese fishing vessels catching blue crabs.
Korea has seen a surge in the number of illegal Chinese fishing vessels in recent weeks.
It is a very serious problem for China's international standing. What's more effective strategy for South Korean government is to put diplomatic pressure on China and four South Korean boats carrying military police officers entered the neutral waters at the south mouth of the Han River with United Nations Command. It was the first time that the United Nations Command was joined the operation since the Korean War. And we have a bilateral fishery accord already signed by the two governments in 2000, and it was put into effect 2001. But you have to see the broad context. I'm all for more effective measures to be taken, but at the same time, use of force to strengthen the monitoring activities of maritime police of South Korea poses some security risks because that area is too close to Northern Limitation Line. So if there be an exchange of firearms, first by South Korea toward the illegal fishing Chinese vessel, but who knows, accidentally it would invite response by military weapons by North Korea, then that area, Northern Limitation Line, already North Korea denied the legitimacy that it belongs to South Korea, can become the source of a diplomatic headache and challenge for South Korean government. And security cooperation between South Korea and China dealing with the nuclear North Korea, that might be affected by the escalation of tension because of illegal fishing by Chinese vessels.
It's all about diplomacy.
Even though the Korean government boasts to use the weapons this time, but I think the frequencies of using weapons will be very limited. Just make it clear that the Korean maritime police can use weapons. As Dr. Bong pointed out, there must be such a kind of possibility. Yes, it's very sensitive and it's quite risk-taking, yes. But we don't have to use the weapons as many as we want. I mean, just use one time or make the message very clearly, then we will prevent from the situations the situations worse. I think that is very important. I mean, if we do not make it clear that we will use weapons or something like that, I think it's extremely difficult for Korean government to deal with this case.
Right.
The situations will be growing
I
worse
completely
and worse.
agree with Professor Shin's comment that we have to demonstrate our resolve, setting examples. In order to establish law and order in any society, you have to fulfill what is called the broken window theory, that you do not allow small crimes continuously happening, but because you need to demonstrate your resolve to tackle crime in all seriousness, which point was made in the Malcolm Gladwell's bestseller book, A Tipping Point. So you have to make small changes in order to demonstrate your commitment to set the principles straight. But at the same time, in order for this policy to be successful, you have to have your central government watching the back of government officials in operation on the ground, in case in the water. You cannot just give a mixed message to these Coastal Guard officers that be resolute, but at the same time beware of some unwanted, ripple effect on other aspects of, diplomatic relations between the two countries. Then these military officers will not really engage in a very resolute and stern response to illegal fishing.
So do you think right now a lot of it depends on sound judgment by the Coast Guard?
The central government has to, give the full autonomy and sufficient latitude of freedom to maritime police of South Korea. What Professor Shin explained that South Korean government should do is already written in the manual, field manual for coastal guards. What is missing is the latitude autonomy.
Right.
I mean, these officers have to be free to make their own judgment to deal with the foggy situation, dealing with illegal fishing.
I see.
Similar thing happened when North Korea bombarded the Yeonpyeong Island in 2012.
Right.
The instruction from the top of the Ministry of the National Defense and the Blue House, according to the media report, was resolutely respond, but at the same time, be careful not to allow the situation to be escalated.
Right. A tricky
Very
decision.
tricky, mission statement. So the central government should be the first one to clearly demonstrate the will, the principle in dealing with illegal fishing by Chinese vessels.
Well, we do have to wrap up. Any last words?
In response to the protest by the South Korean government about illegal fishing activities by fishing vessels, China's foreign ministry pledged cooperation with the South, saying that, quote, China puts great importance on educating its fishermen. And on October 10th, the foreign ministry spokesperson said that, quote, South Korea should deal with the incident in a cool-headed and sensible manner in terms of bilateral relations and regional stability. Saying that China is doing its best and South Korea should be more patient. But there's something Chinese government can do immediately, which is to cooperate with South Korean government in terms of tracking down the members of the Chinese vessels which committed the illegal fishing, spotted by South Korean maritime police, and cooperation on the extradition of those members.
So it's a message to the Chinese government.
There is something Chinese government can do.
All right. Well, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us today. That is all for this edition of News Inside. Thanks for watching. We'll be back with more next week.